enough stress to create an adaptation to the system.
Yeah, it's not enough stress to either have a good or bad outcome.
Yes.
And we spoke about this in the discussion that we had with Richard Newsham West, where we spoke about the idea of you want to see something happen.
Absolutely.
Even if it's negative, because that gives you more information than a neutral response.
Yes.
And typically, I think as clinicians, we get a little bit scared of the application of a stimulus that creates a negative response.
Yes.
We're always very happy when it's a positive response. Pain went down, or they've got more function than they had previously. But the negative response, I think, is actually sometimes more valuable for how you then restructure what you're doing.
Yes.
Or make slight adjustments.
And obviously context is everything. Like if someone's coming back from a stress fracture and they come back and go, I've got a lot of localized pain at my stress fracture site.
You've applied too much stimulus.
Of course, like context is everything. And this is about using your clinical reasoning. At the same time too, I think we need to be a bit more critical about if we're applying a stressor that's very low, you may see the primary response be a positive one. So an example may be doing, like, say, gentle manual therapy. Now, again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So it can be very useful to create a window where they feel an improvement in their function, and then you may apply a stressor to then create a hormetic response. But particularly from an exercise prescription standpoint, if you're applying low magnitudes of stress and they feel fine doing it and they feel comfortable, the question you need to ask yourself is, well, am I going to see any changes over time? Or are you going to be in a similar situation where in 3 weeks' time they go, actually, my back still hurts when I'm at work? Because you actually haven't created the changes needed to meet their demands.
And I think that's an important thing with managing exercise prescription in a pathological setting versus a performance setting.
Yes.
So say, for instance, if we use the example of someone who's hurt their back at work doing a manual labor job, the initial period is about trying to get them to pain-free function, right? So that's if the exercise prescription that you have at that level may be at a much lower magnitude, right? And you're trying to induce some of, as you mentioned, these maybe metabolic changes to change the immune and the immunological response that you get, to change the inflammatory status of the person, which potentially changes their symptoms. At that point, you then need to apply mechanical stress to actually improve the function of their tissue to be able to withstand, say, whatever biomechanical task they're doing.
Yes.
And the difference being when you go into a performance setting, they don't have that initial period, and your job is to see whether you can create the mechanical properties in that whole system, but it might be one isolated area to be able to withstand whatever biomechanical task that they're undertaking. And that in itself, I think, gives you an idea of, if you're not over time creating that opportunity for them to withstand that biomechanical stressor over, we spoke about stress live curves, over the number of cycles of application that they're going to deal with in their sport or activity, then the stimulus that you're providing is not creating the right properties in that tissue.